Hi, everybody. All right. Let's get up here. Hey, where are Miami Dade College students? It's nice when you travel with a little fan club, you know.
Entourage.
Entourage, the little entourage. So I'm so excited. I just want to say what Mel said when I not only read your book and the podcast and believe so much about we try to strive for this perfection that doesn't exist, and so many times we sell ourselves short. Talk about your book. Talk about how you live a life that focuses on bravery and not trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
And just share that. We'll start there, and then we have a lot of things to talk about.
But I want to get this out of the way. So Madeline's birthday is tomorrow, so can we please do a big happy early birthday? You should always celebrate your birthday. Part of living bravely is living joyfully. So I got obsessed with this idea of brave, not perfect a few years ago when I was asked to give a TED Talk. And I live my life with women and girls, you know, as the founder of Girls Who Code. And I wanted to think about, like, what is it that I've seen in teaching girls that I have to say on the TED stage? And I kept thinking about this story that every Girls Who Code teacher would tell me. And it went something like this. You know, when students first come to our program, none of them have coded before. So everybody is starting from a baseline of 0. And so that first week, when the student's learning how to code, a student will call her teacher over. And she'll say, I don't know what code to write. And the teacher will look at her screen and she'll see a blank text editor. And so when she presses undo on the screen, she saw that her student actually wrote code and then deleted it. So instead of saying, I don't know, I made a mistake, what should I do different? She'd rather show nothing at all. Perfection or bust. I tell the story on the TED stage and I walk off and I am inundated by women who say, I do this too. By dads who say, my daughter does this too. And what they mean by that is that regardless of whether they were a teacher, a nurse, an activist, an artist, they had learned to delete the code of their life. They had learned to give up before they even tried. And I wanted to understand when I wrote my book, like, is that true? Like, when do we learn to be perfect? And most importantly, how do we unlearn it? So, you know, I think that we learn to be perfect at the youngest of possible ages, right? We'll go to gymnastics, we can't do a cartwheel, we come home crying and our mommy says, it's okay, don't worry about it. You don't have to go tomorrow. And so what happens is, like, we never learn to fail. We never build that resiliency, right? And so when we can't do something, we think that that's personal. Or we gravitate towards the things that we know that we can ace. And the consequences of this are ginormous. You know, you see it in education. When women declare economics as a major, if they get a B in a single course, they drop out. Whereas boys are like, I got a D. I'm running for president, right? Completely different consequences. You know, you see it in mental health. I'm sure you see this with your students, right? The rising suicide rates, anxiety rates are skyrocketing for women and girls. And you see it in leadership, where men apply for a job if they meet 60% of the qualifications, but women don't even apply unless they can check off every single box. And what I've learned in my work is that the antidote to perfectionism is bravery. And when I think about bravery, I don't mean, you know, running for office or saving a baby from a building. I mean, like, when you're walking down the street and someone bumps into you, you don't say, I'm sorry, right? It's the bravery in the small things that when the big moment comes, you're ready.
I love so many things about that, because you're right. We start very early to create the muscle memory that we have to look perfect, that we have to be perfect, that what girls can do versus boys can do, and it just creates, it's the natural muscle memory. And in your book, you know, you talk about how do you undo that muscle memory and how do you create new muscle memory. And tell us about a personal story that you think for you anchored some of that muscle memory, and especially I think for the girls in the room to hear it and the men in the room to hear it. And I'll say this, I love this. We had Kerry Washington, we had a Women Who Lead lunch, and it was a Sunday at 11 in the morning. And so we come out, we're in conversation, we're on a couch, and I say, you know, I thank the audience for being there, and I know how hard it was to manage, you know, childcare, and your husbands are home, whatever. And Carrie goes, yeah, no, they're dads. They don't have to apologize. It's their kids too.
It's true.
Right? And it was like, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Right? But that muscle memory of
being a good mom,
of
like,
being a good mom. And
absolutely, absolutely. You know, for me, I learned this when I ran for office in 2010. You know, I'm the daughter of refugees, right? So I've had a job since I was 13 years old. Like, my father was like, be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, right? Not a politician. But for me, I just had it, you know, from the time I was little. I feel like you have this too. It's like I wanted to always serve to give back. Yep. I finally found the courage to serve. I decided to run for Congress in a New York City primary against an 18-year incumbent, because I think that that's a great idea, right? I'm the first South Asian, Indian American woman to ever run in the country. I have no idea what I'm doing, right? I'm up against the machine. I've never given a speech before. I've never raised money. I've never built a campaign, but I think I can win because I'll shake every hand and meet every voter. Election day comes, it's not even close, right? I lose, you know, it's like 19% of the votes. I had spent like $1.2 million on like 5 votes. It's horrible, right? I've pissed off the Democratic establishment. I'm broke. I had $300,000 in student loan debt. I got no plan B, and I'm humiliated. But the biggest aha for me was when I woke up the next morning. I thought to myself, Madeline, like, oh my God, like, I'm not broken. Like, I'm not broken. I had thought for so long that if I tried something and I failed, that the failure would literally break me. And so I would give up before I even tried. And so that moment set off set off a brave, not perfect lifestyle. Like, I built Girls Who Code, a movement to teach. I've taught over 680,000 girls to code, and I didn't code, nor did I bother to learn, right? And so for me now, it's like I've learned that like failure is a gift. And so how do I practice that? So every morning, like I literally, if you go to my kitchen, I have rejection letters. Like I put myself out there every single week to do something that's really hard, that's not gonna happen. And when it doesn't happen, instead of being upset about it, I face it. Because you know what? No one can tell me that I can't do anything, right? I also realize that like when I think about my role models, like Serena Williams, right? She sits at the edge of her ability and a coach who says, do it again, do it again, do it again. If you want to be great, which I do, you got to make mistakes. You got to fail. And so part of that is really surrounding yourself with rejection. You know, the other hack I would say is like you have to practice imperfection. I think about this when I give talks like this, and normally when we give talks like this, it's Q&A time, and I'm talking about bravery, I'm talking about perfection, I'm talking about Girls Who Code. It's time for questions, and there's women and men in the audience, but guess what? The first 10 hands raised, the men, right? And what are we doing? We're not raising our hand because we're perfecting the question, we're thinking about it, we're turning to our girlfriend being like, does that sound smart? And by the time we get the courage to raise our hand, I'm in my Uber on my way home. And what's the dynamic that's left in the room? The men think that the women have nothing to contribute, that we have nothing to say, no ideas, no thoughts. And the women in the room, we're pissed because Joe said the same thing that we were going to say, except we're going to say it a little smarter. And so bravery to me means getting your hand up in the air right away. When you're not sure exactly what you're going to say, when you're not sure if it's smart enough, but just practicing that muscle to say, I'm here, I can lead, and I got something to say too.
I love that, practicing courage and bravery every day, right? I think an affirmation, that I've had, forever is like, I'm enough.
Yeah.
And it's so profound just to think, I'm enough. Like, it's okay to simmer down, I think, what's going on in our mind a mile a minute,
Totally. And it's not crazy that you think that it's not crazy that we think we're not enough, Because so much in this movement for women, you know, people got to remember, right, that 75% of high school valedictorians are girls. The majority of those getting their college degrees are women. When we talk about affirmative action, you don't got affirmative action for women. We're good, right? Now the majority of those getting their PhDs are also women. So then when you look at any workforce in the world and you look at why are we not at the top, you got to ask yourself why. Why does the United States have the most educated population in the world with the least amount of labor market participation? Here's what we're told why. We're told the reason why we're not at the top is because, girl, you don't got enough confidence. You need to get a mentor. If you color coded your calendar, you too could be CEO. We're told that we're the problem, that we're not good enough, that if we just took that one more course, that one skill set, we power posed before I walked in here, that we would be good enough. We're told that it's you and not the system. We've been distracted from focusing on the things that are actually broken. And so now we're left here to tell ourselves that we got to look in the mirror and say, you're good enough. And I do the same thing. Yep. And it's not just us, it's the system. It's this lie that we've been told that, like, I'm definitely on a mission to really dismantle.
Yeah, and people will say, I always get the question about the first woman, hit a few roles of the first woman, and I'm like, can we not have that question? How did I feel? Like, it should be the norm. We should be in the boardroom, and I say where the gaps are. 60% of women are enrolled in higher education, 29% of college and university presidents are women. And it's lopsided to more women in community college, not universities, right? But then you think about boardrooms and you think about the Fortune 100 company and CEOs not represented there. But I do think it starts really from that early age to not going for it. I love the stat that, and I love this, men, 60%, if you read the job description and you think you hit about 60% of it, you apply. Mm-hmm. Women were like, oh, no, sorry, didn't have that one. Nope, I can't apply. You guys just hit send, apply, you're in Indeed, no problem, right? So it's about taking the chances. And I want to pivot to Girls Who Code. Like, walk us through how you created it. What were you wanting to do? I know that you wanted, obviously, to really impact the tech space with women and flood it, right?
Yeah.
And so...
Well, I started off wanting to just help girls like me march up into the middle class. My parents were refugees. My father worked as a machinist in a plant. My mother sold cosmetics. And so my daddy would always say, Reshma Beta, you can be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer. And so when I was that congressional candidate and I lost, I remember I would walk into these classrooms and there were just a ton of boys, no girls who looked like me. And so coding, back then you could make $120,000 a year, right? These were good jobs that would help girls march into the middle class. And so I started Girls Who Code because I wanted to close the opportunity gap. And then when I started building it, I realized that the most powerful thing about girls is, like, they want to help somebody. Maybe their daddy has cancer and they want to find a cure to cancer, or their brother's dyslexic, right? They're change makers, which is why they're going to save us, heal us. And so for me, coding, and we'll talk about AI later, is like an arsenal in their toolkit, right? It's a tool that they can use to find that cure to cancer, to solve climate change, to fix, to solve COVID, right? To do something about our biggest, toughest problems. And so, I built Girls Who Code. We've, 680,000 girls later, half of the girls we teach are, under the poverty gap, are Black and brown. One of my first programs were right here in Miami. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I had one of my students' mothers. Every day, she would drive her daughter to this program, sit in the parking lot, and just to give her daughter and then the family a shot at one of those jobs. because back then it wasn't like this. There weren't these kinds of opportunities, and we knew who was getting those opportunities and who wasn't. And our program was one of the few ones that were really targeting the Title I schools, right? Going into our communities and making sure we found that one girl and said, you can code too, this is what it is, you can build, you can create. And so for me, and this is exactly what's happened, 13 years later, you go to any college, in America, you go into computer science classes and engineering classes, and they're half boys and half girls. 10 years ago, it was 20%, and they're my girls. And they're black, and they're brown, and they're poor, and they're immigrants, and they're trans, and they're gay, and they're what America looks like. And we make sure that anybody who wants to learn how to code has an opportunity to do that. And by doing that, we're closing the opportunity gap in America.
Yes. We say always, talent is universal, opportunity is not. I remember girls who code. I had a daughter in elementary. My daughter's 20 now, and we would do an hour of code in Miami. So they would get on, and the teacher was like, "No, the girls are coding, and it's an hour of code." So to see where it is today, and just the acceleration of tech in general. You talked a little bit about AI. How do you see AI and the impact? Sometimes people will say that you may not even have to learn how to code anymore because, AI will do the code for you. And I think, at the college, we, talk a lot about this. AI and ChatGPT has democratized information.
Yeah.
Not knowledge.
Yes.
Information. Right? And what I think really the future of education and the intersection of AI is really how to accelerating talent in a knowledge economy, in a skills economy. Yeah. And it's not necessarily, knowledge is knowledge, it is not information. Yeah. Because when you have the foundational knowledge, you think critically, you make better decisions, you can check things out. So how do you see that happening,
Yeah, I'm like everywhere talking about this because I feel very passionate about it. Like, the first thing we got to do is make sure we don't make the mistakes of the past. And so much of the conversation around AI is about risk and safety, and that's important, right? But it's also, there are some folks that are creating a lot of fear mongering, right? And so when we fear monger, in technology, our instant reaction is to take it away. I remember, when I was in college and, or law school, you couldn't bring your laptop to class, right? You couldn't use Google search at jobs. We were so terrified that the technology was going to take away jobs and opportunities that we banned it. And when you do that, the people that are the most affected by that are people of color and women. The reason why I have to work so hard to close the gender gap, we forget the world's first programmer was a woman. In the 1990s, we were at equality. But then we had Barbie dolls that said, I hate math, let's go shopping instead. We had shows that showed like a programmer instead of a girl of color, and we turned them off. And now we're working hard to close that access gap. We did the same thing with broadband. There's a reason now, almost 40 years later, that 44% of Americans that make less than $30,000 a year still don't have broadband. All these years. Because we scared them about it. And we're doing the same thing with AI. And so what's happening is every private school in America, I can tell you, they're using ChatGPT every single day. Every Title I school, not even there. And so we're doing the exact same thing. So we have to make sure, leaders like us got to make sure that we are asking about the access gap with AI. Does everybody have an opportunity to have access to AI, to have access to ChatGPT, to tinker, to play, and to innovate? Because AI is only going to be as good as we are. And so if we're not in the room, I think about this with Lyft and Uber, right? Lyft and Uber was created by a lot of people who didn't look like the folks in this room. And so what happened is that oftentimes the app was used, there wasn't a feature on the app that if you were a woman and you had gotten into a car and you were sexually harassed, that you could notify somebody. We would have put that feature on the button when it was launched because we knew what was going to happen. So the same thing's going to happen with AI if we're not sitting around the room. So to me, I'm really big about talking about aspirational AI. So let me tell you about what I did and what I think everybody in this room should do. So because I'm in these conversations of AI, I'm always thinking about how could the tool be used for good. The work that I'm doing now, and we'll talk about that later, is Moms First, which I believe that, you know, we have to have childcare and paid leave if we're ever going to get to equality, okay, period. 1 out of 4 women go back to work 2 weeks after having a baby. It's unconscionable, right? 40% of parents are in debt because of the cost of childcare. Most women work to work. If you can't fix those two things, you are never ever gonna have equality, period. So I'm on a mission. So I started thinking about, well, how can I actually, and again, with paid leave, we're the only industrialized nation in the world that doesn't have paid leave. So I've been thinking about, as I'm building this movement, how could AI help me accelerate this? And so I had this idea about creating a tool. So I reached out to my friend Sam Altman, and I said, I want to build something called paidleave.ai. And so here's what the tool, and we launched it in December. It was one of the first ever public sector tools ever announced, and it went viral. And this is what it does. So here's the thing. Government sucks at customer service. If you've ever applied for a student loan, for WIC, for Medicare, Medicaid, paid leave, they make it so damn hard, even though that's our money. What AI can do is make that process easier for you. So if you're low income and you've got 30 minutes to figure out whether you're eligible, it can help tell you whether you are or aren't. So if you go to paidleave.ai, it quickly tells you, am I eligible for paid leave? How much money can I get? And it gives you an action plan. And so the goal is to reduce the gap that we have in benefits claims, in particular for low-income communities. So they get that $10,000 in paid leave benefits so they can put food on the table and make sure their kids have a roof over their head. That's the future of AI, right? The ability to close the equality gap. And so the tool that we've built, quite frankly, can be replicated on any of the things such as Medicare, Medicaid, SNAPs, WIC, student loans, etc. And so why it's so important that all of us understand AI, have the ability to use it, so that you can be like me and be like, oh, I got an idea about education. I got an idea about climate. I got an idea about benefits. I got an idea about poverty. Let me build something and solve this problem. If we don't have access to that technology, no one else is going to do it for us, right? And so that is what I think, that's why I am so excited about the potential for AI, as long as we make sure that we get in the game.
I love it because, so at Miami Dade College, 125,000 students, 60% first gen in their families, you know, to go to college. Many eligible for Pell Grant and other federal aid. And so in 2021, 500 of our faculty went through AI training. We started with our faculty.
It's amazing.
Then we set aside $100,000 and we said to our faculty, write any grant you want. You can be eligible for a $10,000 grant if you've got an idea to use AI in the classroom to enhance student success.
Yep.
We did that. And then we rolled out a college credit certificate, associates and bachelors in artificial intelligence. Almost 1,000 people enrolled in it. Average age is 40, 60% in there women. And so we're really looking at it exactly how you're looking at it. It's like, we're not going to ban it. We're not going to, we're going to make sure that we look at how do we change our assessments so that, you know, AI is a part of the assessment, not something of I'm going to go spend millions of dollars to find out the AI detector if you used it. No, how do we really look at assessment so that it's much more applied and relevant anyway, and then have students graduate with the strong academic skills, the future-proof skills like design thinking, but then the digital skills. Because we really believe the nurses, for better patient care, AI is going to help us there, especially in healthcare.
Absolutely.
When we think about it, our teachers, we have 450 teachers in the pipeline. We want them to teach in a classroom that is future ready.
Absolutely.
So that way when they walk in there, they know, they're not afraid of it. They're not going into the school district saying, no, we don't use it here. No, I use it and I use it this way and this is how I use it for good.
Yep.
And we launched and partnered in a program, AI for All. And it's exactly about that, creating that inclusivity into AI and into access to all the digital tools.
Yeah.
Not just if you're a tech major.
Right.
Because we know that a lot of times our students, female students, may not be tech majors. We know that they're in other majors. How do we make sure we give them and arm them with those digital skills as well? So we love it, and now we have another tool, so that's fantastic. Let's go to Moms First.
What is it?
Yeah, what is it? How? I know what it is, but you all need to know what it
so
is.
look, I found myself in 2020 on top of the world. Girls Who Code had a Super Bowl ad. Finally having my second son after 10 years of fertility challenges. Sai was born on January 25th, 2020, and the world fell apart on that first week of March. And so I found myself having to go back to work and save Girls Who Code from being shut down, because the first resources to go during the pandemic were to organizations that were serving women and girls. I had to homeschool my 5-year-old, take care of a newborn baby, and make sure my people were good. And one of the things I saw during the pandemic that changed the course of my professional life was, you see, so many of my students, were on their way to major in computer science. But because daycare centers were shut down and schools were shut down, and their mothers were essential workers, our teachers, our nurses, the people that kept this country alive, they couldn't go to college because they had to stay home and take care of their siblings. And you saw how this generational cycle of poverty happens, especially to girls of color, because we have a broken structure of care, because we live in the only industrialized nation that doesn't have paid leave, because we are the wealthiest nation that puts the least amount of money into childcare. And so I realized that I could teach millions of girls to code, but if I didn't help their mothers, I hadn't fixed anything. So I stepped off of being the CEO of Girls Who Code and decided to start another movement, even though the first one almost killed me, called Moms First, to finally, once and for all, pass paid leave and make childcare affordable in America. And here's the thing, I don't mess around. You know what I mean? When I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do something, especially when I'm a little pissed, right? And I just think for so long, we've just treated mothers like we're America's social safety net. We've, failed to recognize that 2/3 of the caregiving work, not just for our children, but our elderly parents, are done by women. And that we every day, ask families to just do unconscionable things. And that these things are actually fixable, they're actually solvable. And so Moms First has two main things, paid leave and childcare, and we're doing it in 3 big ways. One, we've built the largest business coalition on childcare. We have over 130 businesses. While we're waiting for Washington to get it together and make childcare go from 13 on the list to number 1, we need businesses to stand up, because the reality is women can't work. And so we recently did a report that shows the ROI. When you invest in childcare and you treat childcare like healthcare, basically you get your money back, 425%. It's just facts. So it makes business sense, economic sense to invest and fix in childcare. The second thing we're doing is we've built the largest movement of moms, bipartisan moms. This is not a political issue. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. We are all aligned that we need to fix our broken childcare system. So we have over 1.5 million moms that are building a movement to push for childcare, regardless of who's in office. And that is really, and getting moms to recognize that it's not just about fighting for your children, it's also about fighting for you and your families, and that's you're fighting for your children. And the last thing is to think about this from an innovative perspective. Build tools like paidleave.ai. When we launched that tool with Sam, we increased paid leave searches by 25% in the globe. Like if there was a Guinness Book of World Record that was counting this, we won it, you know what I mean? And so all these people who may not have understood what paid leave is, may not have known that the United States doesn't offer it, now we're like fighting for it. And it's not just moms, it's dads too. People always ask me, what are you doing about the men? I was like, they're with me too. Especially after the pandemic. I mean, I married one of them, but like, men want to take care of their kids. They want to take them to soccer. They want to be engaged in it, but oftentimes culturally they're gaslit when they do. So we got to fix this whole thing, right? To like focus on families, right? To give families the resources that they need to not just survive, but to thrive. And I really believe that, we are on the march into kind of, into winning this fight once we focus on it.
It's got to be intentional, right? Yes, it's the intentionality, right? And because you're absolutely right, when we think about third grade reading levels, or we think about any of those things, it starts
all of it, right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
Right there. And not just childcare, but then early learning and high quality early learning opportunities. So there's the kindergarten readiness, and the kindergarten readiness gets you to the third
I know we're buzzing,
grade.
but what you're saying is so important, right? Like we have for so long had so much evidence and data that shows that when you invest early, recidivism rates go down, crime rates go down, health rates go up, right? It's an incredible investment. We forget that the United States was the first country to ever make K through 12 education free. And people said, you're nuts. Why you all put money in that? Because we did that, we are the most innovative nation in the world. We run this shit, right? Because we invested in education and we invested in our kids. And we got to do the same thing with pre-K and childcare. It's because the data is actually even stronger, right? But, I think part of it is just, getting people to, this goes back to, we were just talking about this backstage. It's like about empathy and love. What happens is we think, well, that's not my child. Why do my taxpayer dollars have to go into that? And we have to go back to fundamentally who we are. The way we will be judged as a nation, as a society, is how you treat your sick, your young, and your elderly. And that means that we have to make these kinds of investments, and not just, it's the right thing to do, and it makes economic sense.
Love it. We're at a wrap. I'm going to ask you real quick, what's on your playlist?
What's on my playlist?
Yeah.
Beyonce.
All right, awesome. There you go. What's your favorite podcast?
What's my favorite podcast? I'm a nerd, so I do listen to The Daily.
All right, all right. Just wanted to give you guys some little personal information. Thank you so much.
Thank you.